Hello everyone, and welcome to Gaming in the Wild, a video game podcast about games from the artistic, creative, somehow striking side of the spectrum, whether indie or AAA. Today we're talking about a wonderful little indie game that's a little bit of a cult hit, and the reason that we're going to talk about it is that it's currently up for free on the Epic Game Store, which is like a kind of Steam competitor. And the fact that it's up for free, and the fact that I enjoyed it so much when I played it over Christmas last year. It was one of my little Christmas games, you know, put some behind our ear for the holiday season. Little cute games that we kind of just have had in mind, or things that are on the backlog. And this was one of mine, and I really enjoyed it. It's called A Short Hike. So this game begins when we, Claire, a young, seemingly like a kind of adolescent or teenaged bird of some description, she looks a little puffiny or a little oyster catchery or something, wakes up in a cabin at Hawk Peak Provincial Park, where her Aunt May happens to be a forest ranger and she's having a little break. So we come out of the cabin, Aunt May is sitting by the campfire, and we have a little conversation. Turns out that Claire has been waiting around for a call, but the call hasn't come. And May says, well, that's probably because there's no phone reception around here. And Claire is surprised, and it turns out that perhaps the only place on the whole island where you can get a bit of phone reception is the top of Hawk Peak. It's the island's mountain. It's a hiking trail, the reason that people come to this island, one of them. And so, with that in mind, Claire kind of listlessly sets out to take a walk around the island. She's kind of semi-skeptical about getting up Hawk Peak. Sounds a little hard, but she's kind of just going to take a walk and see where it takes her. And that's the mood that comes through the game. It's like one of those summer days where you don't have an awful lot to do. You have all the time in the world. You don't even really have any ideas of what you're going to do with your day. And you get up and you just drift around, you meander around. It's sunny, it's relaxing, and that game really brings that kind of energy to life. It's a really relaxing game to play. The graphics are colourful and sort of 3D. The perspective of the game kind of shifts automatically as you walk around the island. It's not like Mario 64 where you can control the perspective, so it takes a little getting used to, but it's really well handled. And the graphics are in a kind of 3D pixel style, which is quite unusual because pixels are associated with 2D and polygons with 3D. But this game takes a pixel art look and puts it in a 3D world. I actually found that the default setting of the game is to have quite a highly stylized pixelated look, and that when I actually turned that down in the graphics settings, that the game looked a lot easier on the eye for me. It was giving me a little bit of eye strain at first. Something about the pixels shifting the way they do made the screen shimmer slightly or something. And when I turned the pixels down, it just sat better with me. While we're having some settings talk, I should mention that the first time I played this game was on Steam, and I really couldn't figure out for the life of me how to get a controller to work with it. I wrestled with it a while. There is a kind of a key binding menu in the controls, so you can go in there. I used a Pro controller. For some reason, it worked a lot easier for me when I did it in the Epic Games Store version. Actually, something about Steam and connecting joypads with a Mac, it's just kind of a pain in the ass. It never seems to quite go as smoothly as you want to. But this went very smoothly. I just went into controller, went into set the buttons, and you can use the joypad. You push up 3 times if you want it to be up, and down 3 times if you want it to be down, and you can kind of set the buttons that you want. There aren't many controls, but it's really fun to play on a joypad rather than on keys. Although the first time I went through it, I was just so in love with this game from the first moments that I played it. I really wanted to continue, so I just played it on keys the first time and it was fine. The reason that I'm doing this podcast really is because I just absolutely love this game, and the fact that it's currently free, available for free for anyone that's got a Mac or a PC. I really just wanted to put out a quick podcast about it and try and encourage everyone to play it because it's just beautiful. I mean, if you heard the last episode that I did about Control, which is the most dark and grueling and kind of a sort of psychologically difficult game where you can't trust anyone and there's kind of a monster around every corner. It's like a little bit survival horror-y, psychological horror, paranoia and that sort of thing. When I fired up A Short Hike again to do this podcast, I realized just how relaxing it really is. As soon as you start playing it, you get this nice, relaxed, chill, sort of summer holiday vibe. And it's just a real pleasure to play. It's in the name of A Short Hike that it's a short game. If you play it all the way through in one sitting, you can probably do it in 2 or 3 hours. At least, you can. There is no real completion for it. You can carry out the main thrust of the story in a couple of hours. But when I played it, I actually came back the next day to play around a little again with the game, because there's more to it than meets the eye. As well as climbing up the mountain to try and get phone signal, you meet an awful lot of people along the way, or animals I should say. Like there's a menagerie of different animals, all anthropomorphized, walking around in shorts and t-shirts and kind of living their life on Hawk Peak Island. And they all have little stories and little problems, like you'll meet a runner who's lost their headband, their lucky headband, somewhere on the island. You might meet one of the ones that I still haven't done actually is there's a goat that lives in a trailer and he's lost his watch, and somewhere on the island there's a watch somewhere and I haven't found it yet, and I've been in and out of this game 3 or 4 times now for 1 or 2 hours each time because it's just so enjoyable. It's a really pleasant experience to go into the world of A Short Hike. It never gets boring. And I guess I should talk about the gameplay a little. It works great on a D-pad actually. I ended up using the D-pad rather than a stick on the controller because it just feels kind of old school in that way. It just feels comfortable. You run around the island, you can run up and down hills and stuff. You have to collect golden feathers. They enable you to... They're a little bit like the endurance ring in Breath of the Wild. It means you can climb longer. You need to climb to get up to the mountain peak. It means you can start flapping your wings to actually gain height. And then once you're in the air, you can hold down a button to glide. So you can run around on the ground, you can jump up and glide over the nice rippling bays and kind of just make your way around the island. And the controls are a little slippery, it's not precise at all, but you really don't mind when you're playing because it's just very pleasant. It feels fun, just controlling Claire. And I always think that's like the first thing that a game needs to think of, really. If it's actually just fun to move through the game environment, if the controls feel fun in and of their own right. And playing A Short Hike really is just a joy from start to finish. So that's A Short Hike. I don't think I need to kind of talk about it an awful lot. It's really best if you just wander around the game and discover it for yourself, really. I just wanted to put this podcast out quickly, seeing as it's available to download for free for I think the next 7 days. If you head over to the Epic Games store, you have to download a kind of a launcher program, a little like the Steam app, that will allow you to kind of get a little library of Epic Games. Anodyne 2 is also free this week, and it seems like they have a really good selection of indie games available for free every week, so I'm going to watch with interest what comes up. Playing on my MacBook with a controller isn't my favourite way to play in the world, but And a lot of these games don't make it over to the Switch or the PS4 because the developers maybe don't have the resources to take them there. And so I don't want to miss out on really good games like this one. So I'm happy that it's available to play on Epic Game Store. And I recommend it. It's not that much hassle. You can just pair up a Dual Pro or a Pro controller via Bluetooth to your computer, and if you go through some really basic key binding stuff, then you're away. A quick shout out to the team behind this game. It was a small team. The developer is called Adam. You can find him on Twitter at Adam Gryu. Adam Gryu. The music is by Mark Sparling. You can find it on Bandcamp and download the whole soundtrack for $5, which I did to include some of the lovely music on this podcast. So do look them up. So I hope you enjoyed listening. Thanks a lot for taking the time. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at Gaming in the Wild. It's also Gaming in the Wild on Instagram. If you're listening on Apple, I'd really appreciate like a rating or a little review. That helps the podcast rise up the ratings when people are searching for the games we're talking about. I'm having a really good time making this podcast, and I've enjoyed getting some feedback from people who are listening. So if you've got any comments, positive or negative, or feedback of any type, then please look me up at Gaming in the Wild on Twitter and say hello. Always happy to talk to people that are listening and to chat about games in general. Okay, that's all for now. I'll come back with another episode soon. Thanks for listening, and take care.